My daughter, it's her birthday today.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Was that April 24th? Right. I'm going to write about this. April 25th, tomorrow, has been proclaimed as Wear a Kippah Day in Germany.
Oh, really?
And yeah, not just for the Jews, but for the Germans. Yeah, yeah. There was an Israeli Arab who was told by a friend of his that it's not safe to walk in Germany, in Berlin, with a kippah. So he wanted to test that.
Yes.
So he went for a walk and was pretty soon beaten by a Syrian immigrant.
Well, he beat him back. He wasn't passive.
Yeah.
Well, not everyone could do
him
that,
back,
though. Not everyone can do that.
Yeah. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
Just wanted to share with you something. My father-in-law is 91, and he's a Holocaust survivor from Salonika. So they do in Alliance High School in Tel Aviv, they do every year a project with the survivors. They have a theater, and they bring in a few of the survivors to tell their stories. And the kids, each kid is playing one of the survivors' story on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And my father-in-law took part in it. And for like 6 months.
So they tell the story, and then the students put on a play about.
Yes, the survivors were on stage, sitting,
reading
their story, and
the students are.
And the students are in between, you know, they're reading their story. They played on stage the story itself. So for 6 months, they were rehearsing this whole thing, and we were there for the play, for the performance. It was like unbelievable. Really, it's a freshman kids in high school, and the way they're connected to this, you know, survivors and the stories, it was like beyond, you know, it was unbelievable.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a double Parsha this week of Acharei Mot and Kedoshim, and let's do a little bit from each of those. Acharei Mot means after the death. After the death of who are we discussing?
The two sons of Aaron.
The two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu. They died when they brought an Eish Zara, a foreign flame, meaning a non-commanded offering, into the Mishkan, into the newly inaugurated Mishkan. Okay? So, Acharei Mot tells us that we can't go b'chol et el HaKodesh mi beit laparochet. We can't go at all times into the Kodesh. Rather, only when do we go? Ki be'anan eira'el HaKaporet. Only with the cloud shall I appear al HaKaporet. Okay? So there's only one day of the entire year when the Kodesh Kadashim, besides for any sort of maintenance or repairs, that the Kodesh Kadashim is entered. Of course, what day is that? On Yom Kippur. And we go through a whole list of the different aspects of this avodah, of the service that was done in the Beit HaMikdash, on Yom Kippur. But let's go to the incense service on page 640 and 641. Yafi b'chavod, brucha haba, pasuk Yud Bet, b'vakasha.
640?
כן.
אה,
From the top. ולקח.
ולקח מלוא המחתה כחלי אש מעל המזבח מלפני השם ומלוא חופנת קטורת צמים דקה והביא מבית לפרוכת ונתן את הקטורת על האש לפני השם וכיסה על הקטורת את הכפורת אשר על העדות ולא ימות.
Okay. Those two psukim, 12 and 13 in English, please. Cheryl?
Oops.
Oh, sorry. Okay. You got it?
He shall take a shovelful of fiery coals from atop the altar that is before Hashem and his cupped handful of finely ground incense spices, and bring it within the curtain. He shall place the incense upon the fire before Hashem, so that the cloud of the incense shall blanket the ark cover that is atop the tablets of the testimony, so that he shall not die.
Okay. So this is the ketoret. This is the incense that is brought offered in the Kodesh Kadashim, in the Holy of Holies, on Yom Kippur, the holy day, by the Kohen Gadol, the holiest person. The Gemara explains what different aspects of the avoda, of the service, come to atone for. And the incense, which is just the air, the smoke, the hevel, that comes to atone for errant speech, for lashon hara, for speaking badly, derogatorily about others. And again, the kapara that is done in the Kodesh Kadashim, in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur by the Kohen Gadol, is that which comes to correct or to atone for lashon hara, for speaking badly. So we see the seriousness and the power and the destructive aspect of lashon hara, of speaking badly about others. Now, historically, well, before we get to that, the Kohen Gadol has a few moments in the Kodesh Kadashim, in the Holy of Holies, before he needs to leave. And he needs to leave quickly because very often the Kohen Gadol, certainly in the time of the Second Temple period, was not necessarily such a righteous person. When the Romans were in control, this was a position, a very honorable position, which would be bought by people who were not necessarily the most deserving of that position. And they would not leave the Holy of Holies alive, to the point that a rope was tied around their leg before they would go in there. That in case they needed to be dragged out, if they were no longer able to leave with their own mobility, they would be dragged out. So therefore, we didn't want the Kohen Gadol to stay in there too long, because otherwise people start to get very nervous of what might have happened. But there was a short tefillah, a short prayer that he would offer there. And we would imagine, right, here we are, Yom Kippur, Holy of Holies, Kohen Gadol, right, a chance for a short tefillah, a short prayer. And incredibly, the short tefillah at least included, don't listen to the prayers of the travelers. The travelers are going to be praying, let it not rain. let it not rain. Right? We want to get home. Right? In those days, it wasn't just a matter of having the windshield wipers go a little bit faster. Right? You get drenched, you get drenched. Right? Your stuff gets ruined, you get, right? It's impossible to, right? It's a serious issue. But we need the rain. And therefore, the tefillah, the prayer was, don't listen to the prayer of the travelers. Now, why is the prayers of the travelers such a strong prayer that we need the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies to combat that, to go out against that? Why is that? Why is that prayer so powerful? Why is the traveler's prayer so powerful that we need to bring in the big gun, so to speak, in order to try to take it away? What are you saying, Elizabeth? Don't be bashful.
They feel it with
Good. They feel it from their heart. Right? We offer a lot of prayers. We do that often. But very often it's somewhat rote. It's somewhat mechanical. It's lip service. Right? In the morning davening at Shacharit, after my Shemona Esrei, that's where I take time for my personal requests. But I find even my personal requests have sort of settled into a section. Those who need healing. Then I move on to those who are going through a difficult time in their lives that they should have. And then I go through the community. And then I go through family. And it's so easy to lapse into a rote structure. And it's so crucially important that when we are praying, when we are davening, that it comes from the lev. Right? And even though, yes, we do have a very structured tefillah, the Amidah is very structured. It's these 19 brachot, and it's in this order, and it must be in that order. So, yes, it's very important that we all are unified. We all are offering that same tefillah. We're all pointing to the same place, to Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, to the Holy of Holies, actually. And that we're all literally on the same page. And that tefillah was written by the Anshe Knesset Agdol, by the men of the Great Assembly, which included Nevi'im, included prophets who were there and part of it, and they put into the tefillah, the Shemona Esrei that we say, the Amidah, they put their prophecy and their insights into that the Nefesh HaChaim, the great student of the Vilna Gaon, writes, that contained in there are all the needs of every person in every generation until the coming of the Mashiach. But at the same time, it's crucially important that we interject our own expressions, our own feelings, our own sentiments, that we personalize it, that we take that structure. You know, if I want to get to New York, as much as I flap my wings, I'm not going to get there. I need to get onto the airplane, and it's going to take me there. And then the Shemona Esrei is what lifts us up to the highest places. Right? But once I'm on the plane, I have my books, I have my Sfarim, I have my personal player, I have all of I make it mine when I'm up there. And the tefillah is what brings us up there, but at the same time, you need to make it yours. Because, as Elizabeth pointed out, the power of the prayer, of the tefillah, of the people traveling, is that it's raw. It's what they're feeling. It's what they're worried about. It's what they care about. It's touching them inside. You know, the atheist in a foxhole, idea, right? When we're down, when we're in those situations, when we're vulnerable, we're always vulnerable. But when we recognize our vulnerability, that is when we recognize we need to connect to something far greater than ourselves. And that is a powerful, powerful tefillah prayer. And that needs the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur in the Kodesh Kedoshim. Want to show you raising your hand before?
You already covered the point. I was just thinking that when you're davening in a minyan, then your prayer is possibly heard more.
Okay. So I would say that for men who have an obligation of tefillah b'tzibur, of davening with a minyan, right? So certainly it's certainly advantageous to be at a minyan. For a woman, it's not an obligation to be at a minyan. There certainly are benefits, right? But it's not. So I don't think it would affect. But being around others that are doing it is always a
So
push.
thinking of all these thousands of travelers all davening and saying,
Yeah.
don't let it rain, that would be really powerful.
Yeah. Now, the Tzedukim were a group that rejected the Torah Sheba'al Peh, rejected the rabbinic, the oral law, and took the Torah, the Psukim, literally. Right? It's interesting. Thanks to them, I have to say, we have cholent. Right? I love cholent. And it's really thanks to them that we have cholent. Why? What do they have to do with cholent? Right? It's an old Saduki recipe. No, it's not an old Saduki recipe. They said, the Torah says, Lo tevaru eish b'chol moshvotechem. B'yom HaShabbat. On Shabbat, there should not be any fire, right, in all of your homes. And therefore, for them, Shabbat was dark. Literally dark. No lights. Lo tevaru eish. There can't be any of the fire, any illumination b'yom HaShabbat, which is so fascinating. Because if we were to play Pictionary, and I wanted your answer to be Shabbat, what might I draw for you to say Shabbat? The candles. Maybe the challah, maybe the kiddush cup, but probably the candles. Right? For us, and that's rabbinic. There is no mention in the Torah of Shabbat candles. But that was the rabbinic insight. And for us, we associate and we feel the glow and the beauty and the splendor of Shabbat. We associate that with the candles. Right? And the candles are there for Oneg Shabbat, for the beauty of Shabbat, the enjoyment of Shabbat. They're there for Shalom Bayit, right, to increase the harmony and the warmth of the home. But for them, it was absolutely no lights at all. Their tefillin they would wear, beinei nechem, right, not above the eyes but on the head, literally between their eyes. Cholent. Right? So in order to show that we ascribe to the teachings of the rabbis, and that we can and do utilize light and fire in certain ways within the context of halacha, we do have hot food on Shabbos, so therefore it became the custom to specifically have hot food Shabbat afternoon. How do you have hot food Shabbat afternoon? You can't cook on Shabbat. Or you have the cholent, or the chamim, as it's called in Israel, which is a stew that goes up before Shabbat, right? It used to go onto the plata, for many still does, goes onto the plata, or in Yiddish onto the blech, right? And it's a covered fire, right? Nowadays, mostly we use, I shouldn't say, but in my house we use crock pots now, right? It makes it a little bit easier, and that goes up before Shabbos. And then, Shabbos afternoon, for those who sadly can't join us for Shabbos luncheon every week here at Beth Jacob, right? So then you have the cholent, or we have the cholents over here in the big crock pots that are going. But the whole idea is that yes, we are going to have hot food on Shabbat. We are going to enjoy, right? Because we accept the teachings, the oral law that accompanied the written Torah, and that we understand was given to Moshe on Har Sinai. Right? And if you think about it for a moment, the way I see it, it only makes sense. If Hashem's going to say to Moshe, and there should be an ot beinei necha and totafot, the ot al yadecha totafot beinei necha, chances are, if I were to command all of you, listen, I want all of you to have an ot on your hand and totafot between your eyes. Okay? No exceptions. What question might you ask me? What are totafot?
Or oat.
What are ot?
An oat
What is
a
it?
Sign.
Yeah, what sign is it? Right? Is it a sign that says, no more tax? Read my lips, no more taxes? What does the sign say? What is an oat? What's a totafot? What does it mean? What's it about? Right? And that's what the Torah Shebaal Peh goes through exactly what each of these things are. Right? If it says, V'zavachta, the animal should be slaughtered, what does that mean? How does one slaughter an animal? What does that mean? Right? Etc., etc., etc. You should have the tzitzit. What does that mean? You should have Shabbat. What does that mean? Right? Everything. What does that mean? That's what the Torah Shebaal Peh is. It's explaining what that means. Now, the Kohen Gadol, we mentioned before, sometimes we were afraid, once it was something that was bought, it might be bought by a tzeduki. And the service that he does in the Kodesh Kadashim, no one else knows it. No one knows what he's doing. No one else is there, even in the Kodesh, when he does what he does. And the Tzedukim had a different interpretation. They said, V'natan et haktoret, verse Yud Gimel, al ha'esh, they understood that you should put the incense onto the fire, lifnei Hashem, v'chisa et anan haktoret et hakaporet, asher al ha'idut. They understood that to be two steps. They understood that you put the fire, you put the incense onto the coals outside of the Kodesh Kadashim, and then that is brought into the Kodesh Kadashim. Whereas we say that no, the incense needs to go onto the coals, and that whole billowing smoke that results must be done already while you are in the Kodesh Kadashim, while you are in the Holy of Holies. And when they would be preparing the Kohen Gadol prior to Yom Kippur, often the person was not that knowledgeable. They needed to teach him how to do all the avodah. Even a person is knowledgeable, only the Kohen Gadol does this, so a regular Kohen would have no experience in much of the service and much of the avodah. And so there was a lot of preparation, and they would make him swear. They would make him take an oath that he would not deviate in any way from the way, the instructions, the way that they were supposed to do it. And the Mishnah says, after they would make him take an oath, he would cry, Hu boche vehem bochim, and they would be crying. He would cry that they suspected that he might be a tzeduki, and they would cry because they suspected him of being a tzeduki, But they had to do that in order to make sure that this once a year avoda, the only avoda done in the Holy of Holies, would be done properly. And I saw a very, very interesting explanation in what these two ways of doing the avoda, of doing the smoke, the billowing smoke, what they represent. And what I saw is, again, a very, very interesting idea. How are we supposed to do it? The smoke billows out from the Kodesh Kedoshim, from the Holy of Holies. And then that smoke will go out into the holy, out into the courtyard, out into the world, so to speak. Meaning that it is in the Holy of Holies. That is where we get our inspiration. That is where we get our guidance. And then from there, that affects ourselves. That affects the world. That affects our dealings. That is where we are getting our inspiration, our guidance from. And that then impacts all and everything that we do. What does bringing the smoke into the Kodesh Kodashim, what is that? What would that represent? We're taking the world and we're bringing that inside the Holy of Holies. Right? Let the world tell us what is holiness. What is it that we are supposed to do? As opposed to let the world affect the holiness, as opposed to let the holiness affect the world. Do we hear that? Right? Is it the world view of today, which is different from what it was 10 years ago, and 50 years ago, and 80 years ago, and different from what will be in 10 years, and 20 years, and 30 years? Is that what dictates who and what we are as Jews or as human beings? Is that the driving force? Or do we have the Torah as a driving force? And of course, it must be applied to the world in which we live in. But that is the core. That is the source. That is where the smoke, that is where the billowing comes and extends out. Are we trying to jam it in, or are we taking that and spreading it out? Okay, let's go to Kedoshim. Very, very interesting command. Page 656. Page 657. Okay. Vaydaber Hashem. Someone take that for us in Hebrew, please. Vaydaber Hashem.
וידבר השם אל משה לאמור, דבר אל כל הדת בני ישראל, ואמרת אליהם, קדושים תהיו, כי קדוש אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Good. In English.
Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the entire assembly of the children of Israel and say to them, You shall be holy, for holy am I, Hashem your God."
Wow. Kedoshim tihiyu. You shall be holy. How do I become holy? What does that mean, Kedoshim tihiyu? Rashi explains, Kadosh means to separate oneself. Havu prushim min ha'arayot umin ha'aveira. Rashi says that this refers specifically or focuses on sexual lust matters. Right? Separate yourself from prohibited relationships. Ramban views it in a more general way. And he says, he raises the idea, the possibility of what he calls a menuval b'rshut haTorah. A menuval b'rshut haTorah means a lowlife who is very careful to be within the confines of the Torah, but he's a menuval. He's a lowlife. Meaning, the Torah can't legislate every aspect of every situation. The Torah gives us parameters. The Torah sets us on a course. But with that, that is meant to impact who you are and how you act in every situation that you come across. I think I mentioned to this group before. I always forget which group I've mentioned what to. Right? Happens with age and time. Right? But there was a person who was in the process of converting, and the person had been at work and had really berated some of the people who were working for him, and he felt very bad afterwards. And he said to me, like, Rabbi, what am I doing here? I'm learning about all these different, I'm learning about kashrut, I'm learning about all these things, but then I go and I treat these people who are working under me, I treat them in such a terrible way. What am I doing? And I said to him, you're missing the boat. That's what you're doing. You're right. You're 100% right. If you're being meticulous about different things and it's not affecting who you are and what you are as a human being and how you treat others, then you're right. You're asking yourself a good question. What am I doing? And I said, you mentioned kashrut. Yeah, you go into a store and you're careful, you check each thing to see if it's kosher. What is that meant to do to you? That's meant to give you a sense that I'm living in God's world. And God has laid out for me certain things are good for you spiritually, certain things are not good for you spiritually. Even if you don't go with that, you're in my house. This, yes, and this, no. All right? I say, you come to my house, I don't have to tell you why I want you to take off your shoes or not take off your shoes, or why you can go into that closet but don't go into that. I don't have to explain. It's my house. You understand you're in my house. You follow the protocols of my house. Kashrut is meant to make you feel, whenever you're eating something, whenever you're shopping for something, you're checking for the kashrut, you recognize, I'm in God's house. I'm in God's presence. And if that's the case, if I'm in God's house, I'm in God's presence,
I go by God's rules.
then I recognize that. And I need to act accordingly. And if I have that focus on my head, good morning, how are you? If I have that focus in my head, so then when I'm dealing with a worker who's not performing up to par, and I might have to let that person go. It happens sometimes. But how am I going to do that? I recognize he's a child of God. I recognize I'm in God's presence. How would I want to be treated? How does God want me to treat this person in this situation? Kedoshim to you, Ramban says, is that don't become a menuval b'rshut haTorah. Right? All of these laws are meant to impact upon you and affect your every way of acting. Kedoshim to you, ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Because I, Hashem, your God, I am kadosh. What's the connection? You should be holy because I am holy. You should be Rabbi Ciner because I'm Rabbi Ciner. Does that work?
No.
Except we're B'Tselem Elohim, so we're supposed to follow in that sort of molding.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I am holy. I am Kadosh, Hashem says. You are created B'Tselem Elohim. And therefore, you have the ability, the capacity to become God-like. Now, that's an incredible statement. Especially when we realize, who is this said to? Is this said to the leaders? Is this said to the scholars? Is this said to the holy people? Is this said to the rabbis? Who is this said to? Pasuk Bet began, Daber El Kol Adat B'nei Yisroel. Speak to who? Every single member. Kol Adat, the entire assembly of B'nei Yisroel. And say to them, Kedoshim Tihiyu. So if a person ever feels for a moment, right, who am I, what am I? Right? Either with my position or with my background or with my experiences or with that which I have done. Kol Adat B'nei Yisrael Kedoshim Tihiyu. The entire assembly of the children of Israel, Kedoshim Tihiyu. You have the ability to become Ki Kadosh Ani Hashem Elokeichem, become God-like. Now, I've said this before, right? A elevator pitch, right? You have 45 seconds or less, right? What is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is a physical act that we do here in this world that gives us the ability to touch the spiritual, to touch the eternal. That is what a mitzvah is. A physical act that we do here with our physical body in the physical world that allows us to touch eternity, to touch godliness, to touch spirituality. That's Ki Kadosh, the mitzvot. In and of themselves, and as Ramban said, the way that's supposed to flow over into everything that we do is meant to lift us up into a spiritual realm, a spiritual state, a spiritual way of thinking. Yes, Janet?
So that seems to be a little bit more parallel to the beginning of the incense smoke being outside and being taken in, because you're starting in this world and trying to reach up rather than...
No, I'm taking the holiness and making sure that that affects my dealings in every aspect of this world. The outside world is not dictating what holiness is.
No, but
Holiness will dictate my every dealing in this world. That's where it starts and it goes out.
But this concept can be taken into a negative
What do you mean, Yafi?
situation. Like people think God is Kadosh and we are Kedoshim to so it, like bad personality can take it into I'm God, I'm in B'Tselem Elohim, I can do whatever I want, I can be controlling everything.
Look,
You get what I'm saying?
yes. I mean, but that's clearly a distortion.
Can be taken,
Right? Anything can be distorted, right? This is a charge. Make yourself holy, right?
yes,
Yeah.
I understand it, but in this world,
No shortage of crazy people, and no shortage of people who will take and twist anything and everything into their agenda or their preconceived notions and prejudices. Yeah.
So are you saying that somebody could say, I'm holier than anyone else?
Exactly.
But that's kol adat b'nei Yisrael.
And like
But-
kings or leaders can just consider themselves,
Okay.
godly,
Powerful
and
people.
everybody's below
Beneath.
them, and
Yeah, and that's why.
there's dictators and all those,
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just people who had powerful jobs that,
exactly.
Yeah.
They cannot distinguish between good and bad, and
That's
you
right.
know.
Well, and that's I think what this is addressing, right? We have the mitzvah that a king has to carry around a sefer Torah
Right.
with him at all times.
Yeah. And
Why
read
is-
it, and read it all the time.
Yeah, why is he
Everything
carrying it around at all
himself.
times? In order to remind himself that he is under God like everyone else. And a powerful person, right, in whatever field that person is, they need to recognize, right, Kedoshim to you, ki Kedoshim Hashem Elokeichem, right? And that's kol adat b'nei Yisrael, right? The person who's reading this, it's not me, the king, it's not me, the ruler, it's not me, the rabbi, it's kol adat b'nei Yisrael. It's every single person, and to recognize, right, where we are. And then we go into, right, all these different aspects. Parents, I'm reading on the English now, just along on the side of the paragraph to the left. Holiness, parents, Sabbath, idols, and then pigul, rejected offerings, a certain aspect of a sacrifice. And then what do we have right away? Gifts to the poor. Gifts to the poor, right? That page 659, right? That's holiness. Holiness is, right, the lofty aspects, and it is the down gritty, right, where the tire hits the road, right? Gifts to the poor, right? Honest dealings with others, right? Let's go to 661. All right, pasuk Yudalid. Lo tikalel cheresh. V'lifnei iver lo titein michshol. Pasuk Yudalid 14. V'areta me'elokecha ani Hashem. Do not curse the deaf. Do not place a stumbling block before the blind. V'areta me'elokecha ani Hashem. And this is so important. Last night in the Tehillim class, so someone was bothered. Rabbi, I don't understand. What's this Yirat Hashem? What is this fear of God supposed to be? Why is it supposed to be this fear of God? Right? I understand loving God, right? But this fear of God, right? So what is this fear of God? Is it a fear of punishment in the afterlife? It's so annoying sometimes. Listen to the radio, and I forgot I was listening on KPCC or NPR, whatever it was, and there was a Jewish person speaking about a certain, and he presented himself as a Jewish person, speaking about a certain viewpoint. I forget who it was, right? And he said, like so matter-of-factly, well, as a Jew, I don't believe in the afterlife. I'm like scratching my head, right? You want to say that you don't believe in the afterlife?
as a Jew,
Believe whatever you like. But to put that into the context, like, as a Jew, as if, therefore, of course, right? As a Jew, I don't believe in the afterlife. Right? Yeah. So is the fear of God, is that meant to be a fear of punishment? What is the fear of God? And very often we're uncomfortable with this idea of fear of God. Why should there be fear of God? Let there be love for God. Right? And often we'll translate it as awe. right? And, okay, that we're more comfortable with. Oh, I'm in awe of God, right? I'm overwhelmed by His enormity, by who and what He is. I'm in a state of awe. Okay, but fear of God. But let's hear how the Torah uses this. Don't curse a deaf person. Does he know you're cursing him? He can't hear. In front of a blind person, don't place a stumbling block. Does he know you're doing it? Doesn't know. He's blind. He doesn't know that you did it. He doesn't know anyone did that. He thinks you just tripped on something. V'arei tameh Elokecha, Rashi says, and you should fear God, Ani Hashem. Levisha hadavar hazeh eino masur labriot. Such matters are not. Just one second. Let's go with Rashi above that. Sorry. Lifnei iver, in front of a blind person, don't place a stumbling block. In addition to its literal meaning, Lifnei hasuma